Okay, in this lesson, we're going to learn to use the graphing calculator to plot polynomials and to find their zeros and their minimums and maximums. So the first thing, obviously, is you've got to turn your calculator on, okay? And then where we're going to enter the equation in is going to be in this key that says y equals, okay? So press that. And I'm going to clear out my equation. Now, this can plot numerous equations. So, for example, if I had another equation in there, just said y equals 8, and then I graph it, it's going to have both equations plotted at the same time. So for us at this point, and you'll use that in pre-calculus, but you're not going to use it here yet. So let's make sure that when we go to y equals, that everything is cleared out. We don't want any equations there. The next thing we have to be careful of is this calculator, or this has the ability to plot two different types of graphs. Those are the statistical graphs. They're like scatter plots, and we can do regression lines and do stuff like that, which we will do. But we don't want those now, because what happens if both of them are on, it's going to try to put both graphs on the same plot, and it's going to mess all my scales up. And you can see that there are three of them. They're called statistical plots. That's what's listed at the top. So you need to make sure those are off. So I'm going to go ahead and go up there and turn one of them on. Now, if you see this black highlighted on any of those plots, that means that one of your statistical plots is on, and it's going to interfere with what we're going to do with the graphs that we're going to produce. We don't want it on. Another way you could turn them on and off is actually go into the statistical plot settings. That would be press your second key. Press your y equals key, because above that would, if you see above y equals, it says stat plot. So if you press second, y equals, you get this page, which has all sorts of settings for your statistical plots. You should see that they're all off. Of course, one of mine is on because I turned it on, so I could turn that off here also. I'm going to press enter, and now I get into some information on my statistical plot. I'm going to cursor to off and turn it off there, and now I'm going to go back to my y equals, so press y equals, and you can see that my statistical plots, plot 1, 2, and 3 are off. So what you guys need to make sure that you're going to do right now is make sure there are no highlighted plots. Like I said before, you don't need to go into the statistical plot page. You could simply turn them on and off from here. So make sure that those are all off. Okay. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to enter in an equation into our calculator. And what we want to do is we're going to start with just a simple quadratic. And if we wanted to do an exponent, that's going to be the caret key. There are two types of software on these. Some of them, when you press the caret key, automatically will jump you up to the exponent position on your right behind the x, and you will have to use this arrow key to get out of that. Otherwise, your cursor is going to stay up in the exponent position, so you can enter really complicated exponents in. The other calculators have older software, which is what this has, and it won't show the exponent jumping up. So the caret is going to be to get an exponent. For the first term, if it's a negative, or anytime you want to enter a negative that isn't a subtraction, you need to use this key down here. It's the negative with the parentheses around it. Notice it's got a small little negative, not a big one like the subtraction. So let's go back. I'm going to clear that out. And I'm going to press the subtraction key, and you can see the difference. You do not want to put a subtraction in the front. It will air out. You need to have a negative. This is the negative key. All right, so with that, I'm going to clear that negative out, and I'm going to go ahead and enter this equation in, and that equation is x squared. So here's x right up here in the corner, right there, x caret 2. Then I'm going to go plus 2x minus 4. All right, so I have mine entered in. Now I'm going to go look at the graph. Now, before we get a lot of people saying what's right or wrong, if they can't see that graph, I'm going to go through another piece of information after I get my graph. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and press graph, and there is mine. Now, yours could look different because your scales could be different. So I'm going to show you one way to quickly get back to this. This is the basic graph. Okay, one of the problems that you could have with your graph is the scale. And it will error out if your scale is way off. So what we have is we have this, look at these buttons right underneath, with the same line as the y equals. I have something that says zoom. And this is going to allow me to quickly zoom that graph scale. And what we want to do is usually the graphs will be able to fit on the standard graph, which is 6. So I'm going to press 6, and then I'm going to press y equals, or it's automatically going to go to the graph. And what that does is that sets my graph so that I have 10 units positive on the x, 10 units negative on the x, 10 units positive on the y, 10 units negative on the y. So this is a quick way to get back to the basic graph. Once again, that would be zoom. And we got other things we could do, but the zoom standard, that is 6, is the one that brings us back to the normal graph. Now let's say for some reason I did have something that wasn't going to fit on this graph. How would I change the scale manually? Well, I would go to the window. And I could change the window. It's got my x min, my x max, and the scale, and y min, y max, and all that kind of stuff. So let's say that for some reason I think I needed to have an x scale or a y scale of from a negative 50 to a positive 50. I could go down here and set, now I'm not going to use a subtraction sign, I'm going to use the negative sign. That's down here at the bottom. Negative 50, positive 50. And then I probably are going to want to set the scale to maybe like 5. So I'll set it to 5. And then I'll press graph. And what you can see is that it's shrunk that down, and the y scale has actually gone, that y scale is actually going 50 in the positive direction, 50 in the negative direction. So you may need to adjust the y scale or the x scale for some of the graphs. And then when you want to return back to the standard scale, just go zoom and go back to 6 standard, and you're going to be back to where you started from. So you can adjust the scale. So if your graph doesn't look like it's plotting or it's not on there, go back to the standard one and take it from there, and then see what adjustments you have to make. So, all right, now that we have the graph, we're going to want to get some information on it. What we're going to want to do is get the zeros. That's where it's crossing the x-axis and any minimums and maximums. Now, for a parabola, we have one minimum. It is the vertex. We know that as we get real complicated looking graphs, we can have a bunch of local mins and a bunch of local maxes, and the number of zeros could equal the degree. So let's go figure out how to get the zeros of this thing. And what you're going to do is, notice there's this trace key. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in what's above it. It says calculate. So I'm going to need my second key. So I'm going to press second, and then the trace, or second calc. And it gives me some things that I can calculate on this calculator. And the ones I'm going to be interested in are 2, 3, and 4. The zeros, the minimums, and the maximums. So let's go get the zeros right now. So I'm going to press 2, and I'm going to go back to the graph. Now, before we do anything, look what it's saying. It's say left bound. What that means is you are going to move your cursor to the left of whatever zero you want. So as you can see, as I move my cursor around, it's way to the left now. The 0 is right crossing the axis right there, and I can move my cursor around. I want to get it fairly close to the 0, but to the left of the 0. And then I'm going to press enter. And then it's going to say do the right bound. So now I'm going to cursor to the right until my till that blinking thing goes to the right of the 0. And I've got it to the right now, and I'm simply going to press enter. And it's going to say, do you want me to guess at it? And sure we do. And this is what it's going to come out with. The cursor is going to go back to the 0, and it's going to give me the 0. Now, all these zeros need to be rounded to the 10th. That's what your homework is going to say. So what this 0 is a negative 3.2 in the x, 0 in the y. So I'm going to go ahead and write that down. Okay, so that's my 0. Now sometimes it may look like it didn't calculate the 0 correctly because the y value should be 0, correct? But sometimes it may not be, but it's going to have an exponent like 2.7 e to the negative 10th. Well, that's really a value that is very, very much less than 0. So for its approximation, that's good enough. So sometimes don't get confused. It will be 0. It'll just be a very, very, very small number. And you'll see that it says e to some negative exponent for that value. Okay, so we got the 1 0. Let's get the other 0. So I have to redo, go second, calculate again. Now I'm going to go to where it says 0. That's 2. It says go to the left bound. All right, well, that's easy enough. I'm going to go over there till I'm right to the left of the 0. Too far? Go back. Okay, I'm to the left. Press enter. Screen should say now right bound. Okay, let's go to the right. Press enter. Now it says, should I guess at it? Yeah. And what we get is the 0 is 1.2 for x, 0 for y. Okay, now that I have the zeros, now I could have picked to do them in any order I want as long as I follow the instructions and say go to the left of the 0, then to the right. Let's go do the minimum. Now I have to be careful here. If I say, now what I have here is I have a minimum. And if I accidentally tell the calculator to do a maximum, it's not going to give me the right answer. I need to get a minimum for this parabola. So second calc, minimum is number 3. And guess what it's going to do? It's going to say the same thing. Left bound. So I need to figure out when I'm to the left of that minimum. I'm not going to take any chances. I can definitely tell I'm to the left there. Press enter. Now it says go to the right of the minimum. All right, I'm to the right there. Press enter. Press enter again for the guess. And so it's given me a value. It says in this case, my x value is a negative 1 and my y value is a negative 5 for the minimum. In this case, that would also be the vertex. Next problem, we're going to try one. So I'm going to clear out my current. Remember, none of the stat plots should be on. This one is going to be x, and if you need to put a negative in front of the x on the first term, you need to use the negative key, not the subtraction key. So here we go. X to the third power minus 4x squared plus 2. Hit graph and make sure it fits on my scale, and it sure does. Let me get a couple of the zeros first. So I'm going to go second calc, go down to number 2, which is a 0, and I will take the one on the left. So it says left bound. My cursor has now moved on my graph to the left of where the 0 is. So that's good. I'll press enter. I will manually move it to the right along the curve to where it's to the right of the 0. Press enter. It says guess, yes, and it cursor moves back to the 0 point at a negative 0.7. We're rounding to the tenths. 0, negative 0.70. Okay, so now let me get a max, the local max. I'm not going to get all the points, so go second calc. I'm going to go the maximum, 4. And the maximum is the little hump right around where x is equal to 0, and it says let's go to the left of that, so I'm at the left. Somehow I messed up there. Second calc, max, left bound. Okay, so I'm to the left of the max, press enter. To the right of the max, press enter. Guess, yes. And it says, oh, look at that x value, 7.68, blah, 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 e to the negative 7th. So that would be something that is very, very small. It's got a bunch of zeros in front of the 7.6. It would actually have 6 zeros in front of the 7. So that's basically 0, and I would put that as 0. So that point, which is a local max, is the point 0.02. Let's try the local min just to get the hang of it. So I'm going to go second calc, the minimum, so I have to press 3, not the maximum. Press 3 for minimum. It says go to the left. Let's get close to the minimum. And I'm still to the left there. Go to the right. To the right, press enter. Guess, press enter. And it says that my local minimum, and the cursor moved to the minimum point, is 2.7 on the x, negative 7.5y. And that's how we do it.